Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. I have a interesting kind of topic today that I want to talk about. I know I published a video a couple days ago where I talked about children and disclosure, and I mentioned that I was going to do a part two, but that is not today. Actually, something else more important has come up today that I'd like to talk about from a Patreon meeting that I had with my Patreon group last night that I felt the need to share today more on a public platform. So I will get to the children video part two probably early next week. I am going to the Super Soldier Conference in Orlando, Florida this weekend. Um, this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Yeah, this weekend. Just checking in my mind. It's coming up this weekend, so I won't have time to do the part two this week, but I will get to it next week because it is equally important to what I'm talking about today. But this took precedence because it seemed to be such a profound conversation that I had with my group last night that I thought it was really important to share. So I'm making time for it today. So I'll start this kind of conversation with a channeled message that I received in one of my sessions with someone that I felt that, once in a while I do this, I'll share a message publicly from a session that I've had with an individual when I feel like it is beneficial for other people to hear. Because a lot of times the information that comes through for somebody can be relayed across so many people can really benefit from the message. And so I really wanted to share this particular message today because it's coming up a lot in conversation. And really how the conversation began with this particular person is that they're recognizing that they are healing and awakening from religious upbringing, as many of us are, many of us probably have parents or grandparents and great grandparents that were heavily indoctrinated into some sort of religion, and their life was really comprised around that, or it was the focal point, and a lot of their philosophical views and how they lived their life was focused around these religious practices. And so we're seeing that that break down a little bit with my generation and the current generations to come, and even my mom's generation, because she raised me to be open, and she wasn't religious, even though she was brought up strict Italian Catholic. And my father is has a Jewish background, and so they both had the forethought of, let our daughter figure out what she wants and what she believes on her own. So it was no religion was ever pushed on me, and I think that's happening for a lot of people. But at the same, and it's which is great. It's like let people figure out for themselves. The issue with that is I think there are a lot of adults that are really trying to find their center and trying to find what their belief system is outside of the envelope of like spirituality. When you say you're spiritual, what exactly does that mean? Like, what do you believe in? And I think there are layers and different facets to that. And so it can be quite ambiguous in some respects, because it means something different to everybody. Uh, and there are a lot of overlaps and a lot of, people agree on certain parameters, but then there are other things where people are like, I draw the line there. That's not something I really believe in. And so I have a lot of clients that are asking, what books do I read? Do you recommend any particular religion that I can learn more about, or maybe Buddhism or Taoism or something like that? And what are the recommendations? I really feel like I need some substance, something to follow other than the blanket umbrella of spirituality. And so, of course, I don't particularly have any recommendations because I believe in being open-minded to all, and I think that most religions have the same general theme. I just don't abide by the strict parameters and the guilt and shame that is associated with a lot of religions. And so I just said, you know what, let's consult with yourself and your guides, and let's see what kind of information comes through for you. So I want to read that message today because there's several components I want to break down and talk about that today. So the whole talk today is centered around this message and the different components of that. So before I read the message, the other metaphor that was the metaphor that was coming through in this particular session with this person was that they were using the analogy or metaphor of this woman was the captain of her own boat. So I was seeing it as like a sailboat. I live off the ocean here in Florida, so that was very easy for me to kind of visualize. I see sailboats off of the Palm Beach all the time, and so it was something easy to visualize. And they were showing a lot of sailboats clustered together, and they were showing this particular person's boat kind of going off into the sunset, off away from land, kind of on its own, veering away from the path. And I want to mention that because then it will be more clear when I read the message to you. So I'll just go ahead and read some of this real quick, and I'm going to break it down. I'm going to break it down into two parts. Okay. I got to be careful not to read anybody's personal information. So let me just find the right part. Okay. Okay. Allow your boat to follow its lead unless you are pulled in a new direction that is in your highest interest. Let the stars be your guide, not the unhealed parts of anyone else, regardless of who they are, because if they don't do the work to find their own North Star, they will be influenced by entities, people, and energy in resonance with old habits, keeping them in a cycle where they circle but don't actually go anywhere. So that's the title of this video today, is Finding Your North Star. And we'll get into the religious component of that as well. But I want to stop here really quickly and break this down. So when I was with my group last night, I used the analogy of, because I used to teach hypnobirthing, which is a natural childbirth education, kind of a network of classes and breathing exercises and things like that. And when you're working in the arena of childbirth, a lot of times they recommend that you, at least while you're giving birth, to focus on something, create a focal point. Some people will put pictures on the wall in the birthing suite. Some people will focus in their mind. They'll have an image in their mind. Some people will use their spouse or somebody in the room, like their doula, as their focal point. It really is just a matter of focusing your attention on one direction and tuning everything else out, tuning out the distractions. So this came up in this session as this woman was directed to find her North Star. What is it that you can focus on absent of all the chaos around you, all the things that you cannot control, all the wars, all the fighting, all of the debates, all of the negative energy, and of course, all of your worries, all of your traumas coming to the surface, all of your uncertainties, things like that. Just push that all to the side and create a focal point. And the focal point doesn't necessarily need to be a specific thing. Like, where are you? What's the job, the ideal job that you want? It doesn't need to be that specific. It's just focusing yourself on some aspect, some desire, such as joy. I just want to focus on bringing joy into my life, or magnetizing myself towards abundance, happiness, prosperity. So it could be something, it could even just be, my focal point is keeping me in alignment with my highest timeline, keeping me in alignment with the energy that is in resonance with my highest good. And just that's your focal point. So the focal point can be something very specific, or it could be something much more broad like that, which I recommend keeping it a little bit more broad anyways, like what I'm just mentioning about keeping yourself on your highest timeline, because then I think it's kind of easier for the universe and yourself to follow a path that's a little bit more, there's a little bit more room for changes and shifts depending on what's going on. When you focus on something too specific, sometimes it makes it really challenging to get there because you're trying so hard, you're ignoring other pathways that might kind of get you to the same place, but it doesn't appear that way because you're so hyper focused on one specific thing. So the North Star came up for her in this session. And what they were saying is that there's so many distractions in our reality, people around us that are going through their own journeys, that are all unhealed themselves, that are working through layers of limiting beliefs and what do they believe in? Who can they trust? A lot of people are confused right now. They don't know what's up, what's down, who to trust. So there's a lot of people in this fight or flight, whether they are like they're just angry and aggressive and they're in this fight mode, like they're on offense, so they're bumping into each other that get in their way, and they're ready to fight, they're ready to charge, they are, or running away and fleeing and maybe knocking people down as they go. There's different ways to fight, and there's different ways to flight, so they kind of lump those two together. But there's a whole other group of people that are just frozen and they have their head down, in the sand, and they just don't want to see, and they just become catatonic and they can't move and they really can't make a decision. They don't know which direction to go, and they're just frozen. They don't know what to do. They don't know who to trust. They just don't know what to do. And then we have all these other people that are just fighting everybody as they try to figure out what to do and where to go. And so neither place is necessarily better than the other. They're both actually not balanced. And when people are acting out of fear and in that mode, whether you're frozen or you're fighting or you're running, fleeing away, you're operating from this primal sense. And so you're not operating through clarity. And so what happens is we get into these loops and we have these clumps of people, let's say each in their individual boats, but they're all on top of each other. And they are just blocking each other from their great potential because we're just holding each other back. We're just bumping into each other constantly, like boat bumper cars, things like that. And so if we can each just cut out the distraction, cut out what the person next to us is doing and what their beliefs are, and not argue with them to the point, or these egos, get involved. And then we have these situations where people are like cockfighting and they're just, one has to be right, one has to outdo the other, one has to have a story that's grandiose and more traumatizing than the other. My trauma was worse than your trauma. My hurt was worse than your hurt. My situation is more detrimental than your situation. And now we're competing on who's in a worse spot, all just still bumping into each other. Nobody's actually going anywhere. And we're just circling the loop of trauma, circling the loop of destruction and just complacency at the end of the day, because then you're just consenting to being in the same place and not moving forward. So the North Star is really coming up for me through this session and just in general, where I'm like, okay, what am I focusing my attention on? What is it that I want to create, and where am I going? And visualizing, her in that case and me in this case, as I speak for myself, steering my boat and allowing myself, number one, to surrender and just go with the flow and just see where, if I put the intention out that I am going in the direction of my highest good in my highest timeline, and I have that as my focal part, that is my focal point, that is my North Star, then allow my sailboat, or in essence myself, start to follow that path and just cut out everything else, create boundaries so you don't get sucked in, you don't get pulled in, because this reality is built upon density and clusters. That's why we are jam-packed like sardines together. They don't want us to move. They want us to be complacent and stuck together, and we're distracted. And the more we keep our bodies still, the more likely we are to remain in a lower vibration, which promotes dis-ease and complacency, and we're more easy to manipulate and program. So, we don't move as individuals, and they want that. They want us to be in cities where we're just together, or we're in bars, or we're in the movie theater, or we're just jam-packed in our homes, watching television, sitting on the couch, watching, a plethora of streaming devices that have continuous movies and something for us to watch while we just sit there and veg out, or we watch infinite podcasts, or we watch TikTok and Instagram reels that are, less than a minute long. So our attention span starts to narrow. So now we can't pay attention, we can't focus, and we aren't moving our bodies. And so what we're doing is we are contributing to the density of this reality that we're in. which is conducive to the reality itself. The players that were the players that were the ones that want to control, that have previously controlled, they created this environment to be very dense, very heavy. And the way they do that is by creating density through us and us not moving around, us being still and unhealthy, both in mind, body, and soul. It keeps this environment thriving in that way. They don't want us to move around, because when we move, the energy in our body moves and the channels open up, and then we are more creative. Our frequency rises and we have the capacity to hold more light, and we are less dense, which again, they don't want that. They don't want us to be less dense. They want us to be jam-packed together like the sheeple. We follow the people in front of us like a herd, and we just jam-pack ourselves together in big groups of people, and we do not move. And so if we think about the analogy of being in the sailboat and we start to sail off away from everyone else, and we focus on our North Star, which is going to be different from everyone else. So each one of us can have a different focal point. And it's not that we're all moving in different directions and we're like, see you later, I'm going to this area of the ocean and you go over there and I'm never going to see you again. It's more metaphorical and very much energetic. Where are you focusing your attention on? And energy is infinite. We are all energy. So there's plenty of room for us all to expand, contract, and transmute and shift and explore. The quantum field is infinite. And so therefore we have the potential to be infinite in our thoughts, in our emotions, in everything about us. But we need to move our bodies in order to do that, so we're not circling and creating this compact energy. I want to read the next part of this, and then I'm going to come back to terraforming and some more on moving the body. I'm just going to read the next part of the religious part of this message. They said to her, "You are already free, absent of baptism, religion, books, or any other ideology. The key to enlightened wisdom is knowing all knowledge comes from experience, and when there is an attempt to bottle it up, confine it to words and practices, the integrity becomes lost. Freedom comes from letting go and trusting in your own spiritual direction without labels. Do not let your pure soul become misguided or dim from other people resisting the healing you have done. Set your sail so you can soar free without burden or expectation. Allow the wind to carry you. Liberation comes from releasing control. Remember, all is as it should be only if you believe you are free." Now I'm going to read that last few sentences again because they're so important. Liberation comes from releasing control. Remember, all is as it should be only if you believe you are free. And I wanted that's a really profound statement. And it really made me think about what it means. So we are often saying, and I say it a lot, all is as it should be. And so it is. There are no coincidences. Everything happens for a reason. We say all of these things. But if you really think about it and you expand your viewpoint to a macro level, that only works if you are not in a loop, because all is as it should be doesn't really relay if you are in a cycle or a loop of repetition, because then all isn't as it should be and you really aren't free. And so we really need to expand our perception and our viewpoint to recognize, are we stuck in a loop? Are we stuck in a cycle of repetitive, redundant, self-sabotaging behavior? Or are we influenced by those things based on the people that we surround ourselves with, based on the relationships that we have in our life that have that viewpoint, and they and are influencing us to share that viewpoint, even if it does not resonate with us? And so all is as it should be really only has value if you are doing the inner work, recognizing that you're stepping out of the loops, and then you can say, okay, as I transition, as I shift out of this complacency, consenting to this disempowerment, this cycle of repetition and density, and jam packing myself in with a group and a collective group of human beings that we call humanity, in a way that we are controlled, whether we realize it or not, all isn't as it should be. And so if I truly want to be free, I need to recognize I don't consent to that and then really take action towards doing something to pull myself out of that. And those of you that have been listening to me for a while and are on follow me on Facebook and Instagram, I constantly say, what are we doing to step out of the loop today? What are we doing to change the cycle? Just one shift, one every day, trying to do something that pulls you out of the loop, because we don't just have to jump or leap out of the loop. Some people have a really hard time with that, and that's okay. It's not easy to just cold turkey, just cliff dive out of your loop. Sometimes it takes a little change here and there in pieces that you can handle, so it doesn't feel very overwhelming. It's you got to go at your own pace. We're completely absent of whatever anyone else is doing. We cannot compare because everybody has their own unique soul's journey with the trauma, with the triumphs, and everything in between that's going to create variables that are not possible to be the same as everyone else. And we also are on our own speed for a reason, because perhaps some of our souls chose to be a little bit slower because we want to help people around us, or those people around us that we have chosen to help and guide might be on a slower track. So we're kind of going at our speed. Like when you walk your dog, dogs have 4 feet. Or, they're walking on 4 legs and they naturally walk faster than us. And people get so mad when their dogs are walking fast and you pull them back and say, walk at my speed. Well, that's not really fair because they're just walking at their natural speed. And we happen to walk slower than them. So it's kind of about finding the balance between the two. You pick it up, they slow it down. So sometimes we have to slow down the pace to help others that we've, on some level chose to guide, as long as it's in the highest good of the collective group that you're in. So if I'm slowing myself down and I'm just being just drowned, and those people that I'm trying to help are not doing their part, are just sucking me in like quicksand, and it's preventing me from moving forward, then at some point I'm going to have to make a choice. Okay, I know I agreed to help them, but if they're not willing to help themselves, is it fair to me to go down the destructive path with them? Is that fair for me? The answer is probably going to be no. And when you get to that point of realization, then you just let go of the reins and you say, you know what? I wish you all the best, but I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit and maybe go and help, people who are ready and willing to walk at least at a faster pace, who are trying, who are doing the work, who are going within, who aren't stuck in 3D old patterns and blaming everything on everyone else and in this victim mentality and egocentric mentality, right? So I just want to reiterate, all is as it should be only if you believe that you are free, or only if you have this resonance of freedom. And I think we're all working towards that right now in our own way. But part of it is just letting go. The other important thing that came from that is when they were talking about, religion. I think the biggest issue is when you try to bottle up religion, and it makes sense what they're saying, and you try to put words together and try to create a protocol around it for everyone to follow. How is that possible when religion are philosophies of life, or ways of living, ways of being at peace and harmony? Yes, you can blanket that, where a lot of people can relate to components of it, sure, that we all follow, like the laws of one, for example. But then it's very intimate experience for other people. So when you get into a religion, it becomes very dogmatic, very controlled. There are rules, and if you don't follow those rules, then there's an element of shame and guilt associated with that. And I don't believe that a spiritual-minded, spiritual-based, philosophical way of living has that viewpoint, has those control parameters. So it's really about the point of what I'm saying is to find it for yourself. And how you do that is taking your sailboat and being okay with taking it off on your own. And I'm not, and I want to be clear that you don't need to be alone to do that. I, as a mom of three, a fur mom of another three, and a wife, I can still do that while still being in a family in the 3D sense and supporting them on their own journeys and their own boats. And then maybe there's another version of us collectively in our own little sailboat, all of us, my little intimate family. So there are different versions of this. So it's not black and white. So there's Sherri's soul journey as a soul, individual of everyone else on my boat, energetically, emotionally, physically, mentally. What am I working towards? What is beneficial? What am I learning in this lifetime? And what am I contributing in this lifetime? For me, that's specific to me, my recipe. That's my boat. That's where I'm finding my North Star to help me get there. And ideally, you're in a family environment where, you help each other and you support one another and allow each other to each have their own journey. And I try really hard to let my children be independent and different and let them follow their own path without me trying to micromanage. Because that's the worst thing a parent can do is micromanage their children. And because a lot of times what we're doing is the unhealed versions of us are trying to encourage them to make choices based on what we think they should do. And that's not the way to do it. Because again, as a parent, unless you are fully tapped in to their entire chart and blueprint on a spiritual level, which is really hard to do. And I don't even have that capacity to do that for my own children because I do ethically feel like some of it is not really it's not really my business. I don't know how else to say it. So, there has to be something for them that's just them, that mom's not peeking through the window looking at, all of their stuff. So how can I possibly tell them what to do when I don't know what they're coming in, all the lessons they're coming in with and what they're here to do and the lessons they need to learn while they're here in order to do what they need to do later. So instead of telling them what to do based on what I think is best for them, which is what I would think I would do if I were them, is really what that boils down to. Instead, I try to think about it, okay, from their perspective, from their viewpoint, what is the best way to encourage them in their highest interest, for their highest good, for their highest timeline. And I try to do that, and I try to do that with my clients, and I try to do that with myself and my husband, and friendships and things like that. So, um, the North Star, find your focal point. Try to focus your energy and attention on that and less on the distractions and things, because right now the gloves are off, and we are at this junction point of the spiritual war where there are versions of timelines that are collapsing, that are not coming to fruition. And a lot of those are these negative timelines, negative versions of what we are experiencing now that do go down destructive paths. Different variations of that. I believe that a lot of those are collapsing, and this dominant timeline really is amplifying. And because of that, the powers that are just acting out of anguish and anger, and they don't want to give up their power and their reign, are really going outside of the rules of the laws of the universe. And so it's a lot of what's happening now is we're seeing a lot of dirty play, cheating, things like that. So we just have to spiritually level up. Be careful who we trust. Be careful who we let into our lives. Be careful of letting the chaos around you affect you. So what is your focal point? What is it that you can focus your attention and energy on? Last thing I want to bring up today is, again, movement. And the reason I want to stress movement, I think movement is so powerful right now because that's how we remove the densities from our body. That's how we release the limiting belief systems, the densities, the traumas, the energy, the attachments, the cords connecting us, like the anchors that connect us to the 3D and kind of bind us and connect us to other timelines that maybe haven't collapsed yet, or perceivable past lives, which really are parallel, but another conversation. So we need to move the body so that we aren't sitting down all day, on a desk working. We're sleeping all night. We wake up, we sit at a desk all day. Then we come home and we sit on the couch and we watch TV, and that's what they want. That's for those of us that have those types of jobs. And then on the weekend, we're going to the bar, we're going to, we're meeting up and we're sitting and we're talking or we're drinking, and that's what they want. So we got to move the body. And as we move the body, we can transmute, release, and fuel that fire that's within you so that you use it for something positive. You use it for like something constructive, and you channel that. People need an outlet to let those frustrations go, because we are all human. We're allowed to have anguish at times, guilt at times, anger at times, sadness at times, whatever the emotion is. We're allowed to have it. No one's saying that it's not allowed. That is our authentic reaction to a situation. The key is that you're mindful of it and say, oh, wow, I'm having this reaction. Be mindful and take a moment to process, why am I having this severe reaction or this particular reaction? It doesn't have to be severe. And you just take note of it and you accept it as valid. And then what is the lesson here? What am I trying to learn here? What is this trying to teach me? Take note of it. Write it down. And the quicker we get it, and the faster we let it go through breathing, through intention, through exercise, or a creative outlet where we channel that energy or frustration into something productive. So we create something with it. Those lessons are just going to keep coming around like a loop. And then we're going to have a similar situation happen the next week, the next day. And it might be different, but very similar until we learn the lesson. So what is it that I'm trying to learn right now? But it's not always lessons. Sometimes we are just participating in terraforming. And I want to talk about that as well. Sometimes the challenges that we have in our life have to do with us transmuting stagnant, dense energy in our reality that that presents to us in our life as a challenge or a lesson. But I realized for myself and through sessions that it's not always a lesson for me. Like this certain thing keeps happening to me, and I'm like, okay, I get it. What's the lesson here? I really can't figure it out, and I'm like straining my brain trying to figure out, well, what's the lesson here? I want to learn it, and it keeps happening. Well, I finally realized that sometimes the lesson is not about me. It's about me processing and transmuting a lesson for the collective that just happens to be something that I have the capacity to transmute at the time. That may have nothing to do with me, but as a soul, maybe I signed up to be of assistance to the collective healing process, and I'm taking on that particular problem, and I may need to take on that particular problem more than once in different capacities and different ways in order to further transmute it and to further participate in the healing of that, not just for myself, but for thousands of other souls. So a lot of us are terraforming, meaning that this grid, like I said, it's very dense, it's very heavy, compact, like sardines. They put us together. They don't want us to move. They loosh off of our low vibrational energy and our disease. And there's so much more to that you guys have heard me say already in many other ways. And that's how they keep this matrix thriving. They have a specific system. It's got its own ecosystem energetically. It's terraformed to their liking. And then there's a lot of 3D interference to ensure that it remains that way. Okay. Well, you hear a lot of us saying starseeds or volunteers are coming in, bringing Lyran frequencies, Pleiadian frequencies, Andromedan frequencies, whatever it may be, bringing in higher frequencies. Why do we even bother incarnating as a human if we can just come energetically or astrally and just sprinkle dust frequencies into this reality to, like, does that really work? Well, perhaps it helps a little, but what I've been told, and I've explained this in a few different ways in my books, we incarnate as a person for a lot of reasons. One, so that we can physically be in lives with our family members and friends and coworkers, to talk to them and relate to them and interact with them and have roles in their life to influence them in a positive way or to help activate them. or whatever that may be, to be their mother, to be their friend, to be their companion throughout their life while they go through their lessons, while we go through our lessons. So that's one main component. But I'm talking about terraforming. The reason we choose a body is so that we can use the body as a conduit while our soul integrates with the body, bringing in layers and phases of frequencies, and filled with energetic codes, downloaded with, depending on where you're from, different frequencies and light language. And it's different for everybody. So it's hard for me to come up with one term because it depends on what you're doing, where you're from, and what you're contributing. But in essence, it's energy. So let's just keep it to simple. You're bringing in energy frequencies. And then what happens is through breath, through sweating, through our words, through our intentions, through our energetic toroidal field, we vibrate it out. We just constantly are vibrating it out, vibrating it out. And then we bring more frequencies in and we vibrate it out. And it permeates outside of us and it creates this toroidal field. And that's how we terraform the environment of the 3D, because that toroidal field that I'm creating can expand 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 feet, maybe even miles, to thousands of people within the diameter that my toroidal field can affect those particular people or that land or that energy field, in a positive way or an influential way, while also breaking down or distorting or disrupting the density. Like let's see, like imagine a cartoon and there's a cloud and this 3D world. This whole 3D world is just a dense black dark clouds everywhere, keeping everybody compact, dense, low vibrational energy. And then a person comes along and they walk in this cloud and their toroidal field is beaming high vibrational or specific frequency of energy, and now it's coming out and it's radiating and it's breaking up and dispersing that cloud, and the cloud starts to break down, kind of like when the sun shines really warm and it breaks up the clouds, and the rain clouds suddenly go away and it's like a beautiful day and the clouds are gone. So that's how we can terraform by breaking up the dense energies that are kind of in the atmosphere. So imagine if there are millions of us doing that, projecting out this beautiful different variations of frequencies depending on what we need, where we are. It not only breaks down the densities in the environment, in the atmosphere, it also distorts and disrupts EMFs, sky art, radiation, other projections, voice to skull technology. I mean, all these things that dense portals, astral entities from the fourth dimension that kind of riddle us, and it repels the entities away. And then last but not least, it seeps into the ground and regrids and restructures and re-terraforms the ley lines, the actual energetic grid system. So it's on the physical level, but also on an energetic level. So that's a lot that one person can do. So the roles that we have, the jobs that we have when we choose to come here, really is just to keep our avatar busy to some degree while we are anchoring in those beautiful lights below us, above us, and around us, collectively. And we are breaking down and distorting and disrupting this 3D dense environment. And we do that. The more we move, the more we're capable of doing that. So that's why animals migrate. We see them, some of them circling, they're just migrating through these migration patterns, or flying above us, or whatever they might do. They're doing the exact same thing, but they are more aware that they're doing it. Some of them have a collective consciousness, so they work together as a team. That is extremely important. And that's why I see probably a majority of people who are awake and activated right now are terraforming to some degree. And the role that we're playing, what we're choosing to do with our time, yes, it matters, but that's really not the key. That's not the secret to life. It's really not about how successful you are, what job you have, how many degrees you have, how much money you have. That's just part of the matrix. That's just playing the game while you're here doing your real work. I present myself as I'm a teacher, or I'm a police officer, or I'm a firefighter. Now, I'm not knocking those professions. Like, we need these roles in order to keep the game and the matrix going. but that does not define who you are. It does not define your soul's purpose. It's just what you've chosen to do based on past life or other life experiences and the wisdom you carry. You might be well suited to be a teacher. You might be well suited to be someone that uses your hands and builds and creates because you've done that before many times. Or maybe you're a healer, so you come in and you're a doctor because it's something you're good at. So I'm not saying that our roles are irrelevant. They do matter. But if, again, macro view, what's the bigger, more grander picture of the roles that we're playing is to restructure, to restructure and re-terraform this reality so that we can prepare for new frequencies that are even more high, more full spectrum that we have never seen before. Those now we can make make way for those frequencies to come through. And those are coming through children. And the third, fourth, fifth, sixth wave, as these new waves keep coming through, they're stronger, they're more in tune, they are more psychic. But at the same time, that makes them a lot more sensitive to the 3D. And so they're having these toxic shock-like symptoms, which present like the labels. I don't like saying the words, but like labels, or even hypersensitivity to food, or the environment, because their bodies cannot process this dense environment with the frequency they're holding. So it's essentially like toxic shock. And a lot of adults are experiencing that right now as well. The more you activate and awaken and your cellular structure starts to change and you're bringing in higher frequencies, adults are experiencing it as well. So there's a lot going on here. I could talk about this for hours, but I really just wanted to circle back and emphasize the significance of why we're here, what we are doing, the grander picture. It's not about what sports team is winning. It's not about political parties. It's not about what degree you're getting. None of that really matters. Like macro view, we're terraforming. We are activating and awakening as many people as we can, as if we are capable of affecting them through our words, through our actions, through the books we write, through the podcasts we create. Even some movies are activating and awakening people, but also passively through energy. My toroidal field, how many people can I activate and awaken through just my energy field when I go to the grocery store? So we're all playing much bigger role than we realize. And we don't need to have these grandiose roles to be significant and important, because we're all creating our own fields that are projecting out, disrupting, distorting, and essentially breaking down the 3D. So the way to do that, just to close up right now, I feel like the best way to do that, to really bring yourself out of the loop, find your North Star. Find a focal point. Find something that inspires you, motivates you to co-create in your mind something better that you want for your children, your grandchildren. Maybe you don't have children, but the children of the future, the animals of this planet, nature, the planet herself, everything that encompasses this planet and its ascension and its growth and evolution. What can you focus your attention on? What can you create as your North Star to help you block everything else out that's distracting you and allow yourself to soar and sail free towards that and not get dragged in or sucked in by the world around you? Because it's really hard right now. And I empathize with everybody. I empathize with myself because it's not easy. But I hope this was helpful. I hope this made sense. I had a lot of thoughts in my mind, and it's difficult to relay them all in a video like this because I never say everything that I want to say, and I always regret, or not regret, I always forget something. But I hope that this made sense. So please leave comments. Let me know if this is resonating with you, or if you have even more suggestions or thoughts that you can add in the comments that people can read. We can start a dialogue with all of it. So I think that's all. Thank you so much for listening to me blab. I know I'm long-winded, but I don't do these videos often because I like to wait until I have something of substance to say. So bear with me while I try to get out everything that I'm thinking. I will do another video as soon as possible, part 2 to my last video, Children and Disclosure. I'm going to talk about the fourth dimension and what I'm seeing in sessions with children, fourth dimension entities, things like that. But until then, take care of everybody. Take care, everyone. I hope this video has found you well. And until next time, see you later. Bye.